exhortation this morning is entitled, Have We Really Changed? Have we really changed? It's a good topic for baptism. Let me make sure I got the reading right. Judges 19? Judges 19. I was looking at it and I just wasn't sure. Judges 19. You follow with me? It says, Now it came about in those days, when there was no king in Israel, there was a certain Levite staying in the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took a concubine for himself from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and she went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah. She was there for a period of 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak tenderly to her in order to bring her back, taking with him his servant and a pair of donkeys. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he was glad to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, detained him, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. Now it came about on the 4th day that they got up early in the morning, and he prepared to go. And the girl's father said to his son-in-law, Sustain yourself with a piece of bread, and afterward you may go. So both of them sat down and ate and drank together, and the girl's father said to the man, Please be willing to spend the night, and let your heart be merry. Then the man arose to go, but his father-in-law urged him, so that he spent the night there again. And on the 5th day he rose to go early in the morning, and the girl's father said, Please sustain yourself and wait until afternoon. So both of them ate. When the man arose to go along with his concubine, and servant, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, Behold, now the day is drawn to a close. Please spend the night. Lo, the day is coming to an end. Spend the night here, and then your heart may be merry. Then tomorrow you may arise early for your journey, so that you may go home. But the man was not willing to spend the night, so he arose and departed, and came to a place opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. And there were with him a pair of saddle donkeys. His concubine also was with him. When they were near Jebus, the day was almost gone, and the servant said to his master, Please come and let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it. However, his master said to him, We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners, who are not of the sons of Israel, but we will go on as far as Gibeah. And he said to his servant, Come and let us approach one of these places, and we will spend the night in Gibeah or Ramah. So they passed along and went their way, and the sun set on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there in order to enter and lodge in Gibeah. When they entered, they sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. Then behold, an old man was coming out of the field from his work at evening. Now the man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was staying in Gibeah. But the men of the place were Benjaminites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, Where are you going, and where do you come from? He said to him, We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. For I am from there, and I went to Bethlehem in Judah, but I am now going to my house, and no man will take me into his house. Yet there is both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and also bread and wine for me, your maidservant, and the young man who is with your servants. There is no lacking of anything. And the old man said, Peace be to you. Only let me take care of all your needs. However, do not spend the night in the open square. So he took him into his house and gave the donkeys fodder, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. While they were making merry, behold, the men of the city, certain worthless fellows, surrounded the house, pounding the door, and they spoke to the owner of the house, the old man, saying, Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may have relations with them. Then the man, the owner of the house, went out to meet them and said, No, my fellows, please do not act so wickedly, since this man has come into my house. Do not commit this act of folly. Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Please, let me bring them out, that you may ravish them, and do to them whatever you wish. But do not commit such an act of folly against this man. But the men would not listen to him, so the man seized his concubine and brought her out to them, and they raped her and abused her all night until morning, then let go of her at the approach of dawn. As the day began to dawn, the woman came and fell down at the doorway of the man's house, where her master was, until full daylight. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, then behold, his concubine was lying at the doorway of the house with her hands on the threshold. And he said to her, "Get up and let us go." But there was no answer. Then he placed her on the donkey, and the man arose and went to his home. When he entered his house, he took a knife and laid hold of his concubine and cut her in 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territories of Israel. And it came about that all who saw it said, "Nothing like this has ever happened or been seen from the day that the sons of Israel came up from the land of Egypt to this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak up." Well, I don't remember us having an exhortation on this chapter ever before, so this might be a first. Our topic is, have we really changed?
Thank you, Brother Dan. A little difficult to listen to, isn't it? I find it interesting that I did struggle writing this talk. It's probably a little, I'm just going to disclose, on the darker side, but that's the point that I'm trying to hit on, is that have we really changed? And when I say we, I don't mean we as this body of brothers and sisters. I mean we as a society outside these walls. We live in a world today where sin is extremely prevalent in our society, where if you're not sinning, you're odd. You're the odd one out. Religion is looked as weakness or something that is not to be cherished or voiced. And I think that really needs to be touched on, that we live in a society today, that turns away from what they know they should be doing to what they shouldn't be doing. And I wrote a few words that Brother Dan said in that reading that go along with that. Wicked, folly, and ravish. Each one of them has it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You hear these words and you're immediately turned off. And you see the things that are happening in our world today in 2016. Everything is on your phone. It's on your television. It's on your computer. You see all these things that the world wants you to see. You see all this sin and badness happening overseas, happening in your backyard. And it's a question is, have we really changed from biblical times? Have we changed out of our fleshly ways? Have we focused our minds onto what is right versus what is wrong? Or do we just accept that it's okay? It's already a part of me. I'm made of flesh, right? This morning, our sister Rachel made the choice to be baptized. She chose, and from what motivated her in her heart, she chose God. She chose a life that she was raised to see. And she was given this word of God. She studied it. She knows it. And she chose God over the sinful ways of life. But it can be said that there are a lot more people out in the world who have chosen the worldly ways of life rather than God. And I think that it's time to change that. We need to be the change. We need to be the difference. We need to be the ones that go out there and say, we will not tolerate this. We are godly people. We live in the ways the Lord wants us to live. We will not stand for the wicked ways of man. We will not fall onto wickedness and folly. We make mistakes. But the changes that we make, we are capable of being better people, making permanent changes, making good choices. This talk it's a little difficult. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be difficult to listen to. There's going to be a lot of passages very much like the opening. But my point is, and I just wanted to say this, is that I'm saying this because while writing it, the uncomfortableness of what I was reading really pushed that point of change, of making that difference all 2,000 years later. So I'd like to start by reading from 2 Chronicles chapter 21, starting in verse 4. When Jehoram established himself firmly over his father's kingdom, He put all his brothers to sword, along with some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done, for he married a daughter of Ahab. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, because of the covenant the Lord had made with David, the Lord was not willing to destroy the house of David. He had promised to maintain a lamp for him and his descendants forever. In the time of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king. So Jehoram went there with his officers and all his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he rose up and broke through by night. To this day, Edom has been in rebellion against Judah. Libnah revolted at the same time because Jehoram had forsaken the Lord, the God of his fathers. He had also built high places on the hills of Judah and had caused the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves and had led Judah astray. Jehoram received a letter from Elijah, the prophet, which said, "This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat or of Asa, king of Judah, but you have walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and you have led Judah and the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, just as the house of Ahab did. You have also murdered your own brothers, members of your father's house, men who were better than you. So now the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will be very ill with a lingering disease of the bowels, until the disease causes your bowels to come out." The Lord aroused against Jehoram the hostility of the Philistines and of the Arabs who lived near the Cushites. They attacked Judah, invaded it, and carried off all the goods found in the king's palace, together with his sons and wives. Not a son was left him except Ahaziah, the youngest. After all this, the Lord afflicted Jehoram with an incurable disease of the bowels. In the course of time, at the end of the 2nd year, his bowels came out because of the disease, and he died in great pain. His people made no fire in his honor, and as they had for his fathers. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He passed away to no one's regret, and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. So here we have this story of Jehoram, and how he led the people of Jerusalem astray, how he acted wickedly in the eyes of the Lord. And you see his ending, how grotesque and painful it probably was for him. But, you can't help but wonder while reading this, did he deserve what was coming to him? He led these people to prostitute themselves. He did wicked things in the eyes of the Lord. And Elijah came in, Elijah said to him all the things that he had done and what was going to happen to him. And I don't know, maybe Jehoram had time to change. Maybe he had an opportunity to make amends. But it didn't seem like he really wanted to. He murdered his brothers. He did many horrible things. And I think I always say you have to make an effort. God is looking for you to make an effort. He's not looking for perfection. We are not perfect beings. We will never reach perfection as long as we live. But he is looking for change. He is looking for that chance, that opportunity for you to say, no, I won't do this, because I know that that's wrong. Because God told me how to live my life. And I think every day in our lives, there are multiple opportunities just like that. It doesn't come once every few weeks. Daily, you can find things that you could do differently that would better serve God and his will and the purpose. And it would make you a better person at the end of the day. It would teach you to restrain yourself, to be patient, to work through this. I'd like to turn back to Judges now, chapter 16. This is the story of Samson and Delilah. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, "At dawn we'll kill him." But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, Together with the 2 posts, he tore them loose, spar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Some time later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him, so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh thongs that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh thongs that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the thongs as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes too close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." He said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then, with men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Samson, "Until now you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with the pin. Again she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin in the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him until day after day until he was tired to death. So he told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on his head. Because I have been a Nazirite set apart to God since birth, if my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more, he has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. Having put him to sleep on her lap, she called the man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he had not known that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with the bronze shackles, they sent him to grinding in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So here, a few things while reading this particular passage were going around in my mind. The persistence of Delilah to figure out what would make Samson weak. I mean, she was persistent, and she was driven by greed. The money that she was offered by the Philistines was what drove her to find the weakness in Samson and ultimately play a part in his death. And I think that says a lot about her character, is that she was greedy. And for Samson, I was a little confused as to why he kept lying to her, whether he was trying to protect himself, or I started even thinking maybe he was trying to give her the chance to come clean, to stop what she was doing, to figure out why she was being motivated by this. But again, it goes back to, have we changed? Have our tendencies in this day and age changed from what we read in the Bible? You look out in the world and you see people who are murderers, rapists, greedy. And you have to ask yourself, is it going to change? And I think it's safe to say that until our Lord returns, it is not going to change. The world will remain this way forever until Christ comes and restores the kingdom. But that doesn't mean that we can just stand by and watch all this happen. We have chosen to live a godly life. And doing that doesn't mean just bettering ourselves. It means helping other people, being a support system, preaching God's word, spreading this into the hearts of other people. Because without that, what do they rely on? They rely on these things. They rely on these wicked, terrible things to do. And they will never know true love until they come to God. I'd like to turn to 2 Kings, chapter 9. Verses 30 through 37. Then Jehu went to Jezreel. When Jezebel heard about it, she painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and looked out of a window. As Jehu entered the gate, she asked, "Have you come in peace, Zimri, you murderer of your master?" He looked up at the window and called out, "Who is on my side?" "Who?" 2 or 3 eunuchs looked down at him. "Throw her down," Jehu said. So they threw her down, and some of her blood splattered the wall and the horses as they trampled her underfoot. Jehu went in and ate and drank. "Take care of that cursed woman," he said, and buried her, for she was a king's daughter. But when they went out to bury her, they found nothing except her skull, her feet, and her hands. They went back and told Jehu, who said, "This is the word of the Lord that he spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite. On the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's body will be like refuse on the ground in the plot at Jezreel, so that no one will be able to say this is Jezebel." Short, but another very gruesome death. There was nothing that remained of Jezebel, that she was even identifiable. Her skull, her hands, and her feet. And again, it just ties into the wickedness that we see today. Over a course of 2,000 years, we've evolved in many ways, but our human nature, the flesh within us, our sin, has not changed. It is more prevalent. It is more prevalent than we've ever seen. My mom made a good point to me. She said, every generation will say that the world gets worse. This is the worst I've ever seen it. And after a certain amount of time, how bad can it get? To the point where everybody on earth is wicked, full of wickedness that makes them murderers and rapists and all these things that are just detestable, that we do not want to be a part of. And we are that front line that pushes that back, that can say no, that can change the outcome of this. And it's ultimately, we do wait for Christ's return. But again, we should not just be idle. We should not be idle waiting. It's pointless for us to just sit here and accept the ways of the world. We are in the world, but we are not a part of the world. We need to remember that. We need to practice that. Because if we don't practice that, then without even realizing it, we will fall into these ways. We will become wicked. And we won't realize it. It'll just happen gradually. We are sinful beings. We falter. It doesn't take much. But at the same time, it can be said that it doesn't take much to come to a meeting every week, to break bread with your brothers and sisters. In Rachel's case, to choose God over the world outside. And I think that we need to remember how simple all of this really is, that we are being asked to do very little, but yet just keep to these commandments that God gave us. If you turn to 2 Samuel with me. Chapter 13. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became frustrated to the point of illness on account of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had a friend named Jonadab, son of Shema, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill when the king came to see him. Amnon said to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight so I may eat from her hand. David sent word to Tamar at the palace, Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him. So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. Send everyone out of here, Amnon said. So everyone left him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, Bring the food here into my bedroom so I may eat the food from your hand. And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, Come to bed with me, my sister. Don't, my brother, she said to him. Don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you. But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, Get up and get out. No, she said to him, Sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me. But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, Get this woman out of here and bolt the door after her. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing a richly ornamented robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornamented robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, Has that Amnon your brother been with you? Be quiet now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart. And Hamor lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all this, he was furious. Absalom never said a word to Amnon. Either good nor bad, he hated Amnon because of how he disgraced his sister Tamar. Very, very difficult thing to read. Very just disgraceful, detestable. And again, it makes you ask yourself, have our tendencies changed? Is this still something that happens in our world today? And it's difficult because we all know the answer to that. And we need this change. We want to change ourselves. We need to change ourselves. We need to show that we're making an effort. Because we could wait our entire lifetimes. But if you were to die before Christ returned and you had never made the effort in your life, do you think that you're going to be judged accordingly to that? You're going to be judged for the things that you've done while you're here, for how you acted, what you could have done. We have our voices. We're not just capable of choosing. We are the voice that can say and prevent things like this from happening in today's day and age. And I think a lot of the time we're fearful of getting involved in the outside world because we don't want to be a part of it. But I think that, yes, it's one thing to change yourself and be Christ-like and to go out in the world and preach, but to completely avoid any malice or tension when you could be the difference between a horrible outcome and a decent outcome, I think it's safe to say that we should make the effort to overcome that fear, because that would just be as bad as just what we do is wait. You can be that voice. We can be that voice. I titled the talk, Have We Really Changed? Because the part of the change for the brothers and sisters in this room isn't the wickedness in our hearts, because I don't see us being this wicked. It's the choices. It's the acting on it. Because it's one thing to choose to do something. It's a second thing to act on it. There are good choices and bad choices, and there are ways that you can act to prevent bad choices from being achieved. I'd like to turn to Genesis chapter 18. Verses 16 through 33. When the men got up to leave, they looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the right way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. The men turned away and went toward Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? The Lord said, If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham spoke up again. Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5 people? If I find 45 there, he said, I will not destroy it. Once again he spoke to him. What if only 40 are found there? He said, For the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there? He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Abraham said, Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 people can be found there? He said, For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? He answered, For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. So, what I liked about this passage was that Abraham asked God if he would spare Sodom for a number of people, a number of righteous people, down to 10. And every answer that God had was that yes, for 10 people, he would spare this whole city of wickedness and sin. And I think that says a lot about how merciful our God is, that in a city full of wickedness, for 10 people, he would spare the entire city. And again, it ties back into my entire point of this exhortation. We can be those 10. We can be that difference between complete destruction and wickedness completely overcoming the world, and that little bit that chooses not to act on that wickedness. And we can, God is a merciful God. Our God is full of mercy. He's just looking for that effort. He wants to see you trying. And if that trying is able to save more people, is able to stop wickedness and turn it around, I think it would be very easy to stand up and just be able to do that. Be as righteous as God wants you to be. Follow the word that he's given you, the instructions. Choosing him over everything else. Living the way his son did. Last thing I'm going to read is from 2 Samuel. Chapter 11, verses 1 through 27. In the spring at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, I am pregnant. So David sent this word to Joab, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, Go down to your house and wash your feet. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. When David was told Uriah did not go home, he asked him, "Haven't you just come from a distance? Why didn't you go home?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open fields. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal? Didn't a woman throw an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall? If he asks you this, then say to him, also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.'" I'm going to stop there, actually. So here you have David, the story of David and Bathsheba, how David saw her, her beauty, how he inquired about her, and how he slept with her, knowing that she was a married woman, and he ended up impregnating her. So, to sum up, none of this is pretty. None of this stuff. We're talking about murder, adultery, rape. Terrible, wicked things, detestable in God's eyes. Just gruesome to even think about. And over the course of time, our society has evolved technologically, medicine, but our sin has also evolved. We have become more sinful. We have become full of sin to the point where it's sown into us, that it's just a part of who we are. We are fleshly beings. But it's time to stand up. It's time to say, we're going to make this change. I'm going to be that different person from the millions and billions of other people that live on this earth. Because you could be that one person that makes a difference. Small bodies of people like this and our unity and our support for each other makes us great, makes us better. It helps us to see the things that are important to us. It helps us to see what God wants from us. And every time I get up here, I bring it all back to Jesus. He lived a sinless life, and yet he suffered a horrible fate. And he did it for us. And it always gets me how we are asked to do so little back. He gave us everything. And ultimately, I think what's fair is that we give him everything. So my challenge this week and throughout the weeks of your life is to remember that change, to be that change in the world. To remember that this world is a wicked place, and we're very small in the numbers of this world, but again, it doesn't take very much for God to look down and say, they are being righteous. They're doing what they need to do. I will spare them because they have made an effort. Thank you.